And welcome back to my channel. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And we are continuing with the I Know What You Did Last Summer trilogy with I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. It's kind of a hard to find Blu-ray. I'm very glad to have it. Now, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer was released a year later in 1998, and it was directed by David Cannon. It was written by Lois, Duncan, and Trey, Callaway, and it stars Jennifer Love Hewitt, Matthew Settle, Freddie Prinze Jr., Brandy Norwood, Jack Black, and Jeffrey Combs are all in this. So, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer picks up with Julie back at college. We see her having a confessional dream, and she wakes up screaming in class. She confides. We are introduced to Will, who is her friend, played by Matthew Settle. Lord have mercy. That boy looks so much like Tom Cruise. In this movie, there are scenes where Matthew Settle looks this way or that way. I mean, that dude just looks so much like Tom Cruise from A Few Good Men, but he's got longer hair. But like the first few Mission Impossibles, Far and Away, A Few Good Men, that era, Matthew Settle looks just like Tom Cruise. I have no earthly idea. I mean, I was amazed when I watched this again yesterday. I'm like, Jesus Christ, that boy looks like Tom Cruise. But, so we're introduced to Will, played by Matthew Settle, as a friend of hers. Ray shows up, wanting her to come back for the festivities, but, she's not sure about it, saying that she still can't handle going back to that town based on what had happened. So that night she nearly kills Carla, we're introduced to Carla, which is her friend and roommate, played by Brandy Norwood. And that was a good scene. Carla, despite having almost just been killed with a butcher knife, because she thought she was gone, with Ray back to that town, she didn't know she was there. Carla still manages to talk her into going out to a club where we meet Tyrell, Brandy's boyfriend. Matthew shows up Will shows up because Brandy has been constantly trying to, for some reason, get her away from Ray and get her hooked up with Will, because Brandy's friends with Will too. So I think she wants to play Cupid between those two. So, Will shows up. She keeps seeing visions, though, and has to go back home. That morning, Carla answers the phone thinking it's Tyrell, and it turns out to be a DJ from a local radio station. And asks them a question, what is the capital of Brazil? And, they think it's Rio de Janeiro, and so that's what she says. And he's like, congratulations, you've won a trip to the Bahamas. Now, interestingly enough, I answered the question, and I'm like, but it's in a movie, right? But Rio de Janeiro is not the capital of Brazil. But they won the contest, but I kind of thought, well, Rusty, you must be wrong about your geographical knowledge because it's in a movie, right? So they said that the capital, they won this trip. Now she calls and she tries to get Ray to come on this trip, because Brandy's, of course, going to take Tyrell and wants to take her best friend, Julie, and Ray on the trip. But Ray, he acts all bitch-like and doesn't want to go. Oh, you can go to the Bahamas, but you can't come here with me. And she's like, it's not you, dude. It's that fucking town. I was nearly killed. I mean, there's a lot of trauma associated with that town. I thought he was like kind of assholish for not understanding that. But his friend is listening, and he sort of turns her down. Well, I'll try and stuff like that. So his friend is like, are you stupid or what? And he's like, well, I wanted her to come here because, he's got this diamond engagement ring and is going to ask her to marry him. So he's like, you know what? You're right. Let's surprise her. So his friend offers to give him a ride up there to surprise Julie. It doesn't quite work out that way, though, because they run across a wreck in the road, and he gets out, and it's a mannequin, and Hook kills his friend. I think his name was Dave. So Hook kills his friend, starts chasing him down with the truck, knocking him over an embankment where he is KO'd on the side of the road. Now, because Julie did not know he was coming, she sits waiting the next day, because they're all going to leave to go get on the plane, and he never shows up. So Brandy, of course, has Will ready to go. So Brandy and Tyrell, or Carla and Tyrell, and Julie and Will, they're going to go on this Bahama trip because Ray didn't show up. So Will goes instead, and the four of them head off to the Bahamas. They have to take a ferry out there, and then they end up checking in. Right before they check in, we meet Jack Black. Now, Jack Black is uncredited. He's not credited in this movie. And I really don't understand why, because it's not like his character is, that's a little mystery to me, is like, why is Jack Black uncredited in this movie? Because he doesn't do a 20-second cameo. His character is seen many, several times. A decent amount of, he's seen almost as much as Ray is seen in this movie. And his character Titus is like this dreadlock wearing white guy who just constantly stays stoned, and he is really hilarious. Titus is a hilarious character. Then they check into the motel where we are introduced to Mr. Brooks, which is Jeffrey Combs. He is absolutely excellent in the scenes that he has in this movie. It's Jeffrey Combs, for God's sakes. So I really appreciate his presence there. They then kind of they realize that it's not quite as busy as they thought it would be, where they then learned that the July 4th, I don't know if this is true or not, but that July 4th is actually the last day. That weekend is actually the last day of the season. So they are not, there's not a lot of people on the island. Most everyone leaves. Like I said, I don't know if that's true or not in real life, but that's the way it is in this movie. It's actually off season. Now, we see Ray, he wakes up in the hospital. And the cops, one of the doctor tells the cop the story that he had told him when he came in, and they discuss it with Ray laying right there thinking he's unconscious. And of course, neither one of them believe it. He, knowing they don't believe it, decides to take care of matters on his own. So when they walk out the room, he jumps out the window and takes off, even as injured as he is. I mean, why not, right? It was quite obvious they don't believe him, so there was nothing more to do. So I guess he's going to try to warn her and or get to her. We're introduced to Nancy at the bar. They have a bunch of drink and be merry scenes. But then Julie sees the "I know what you did last summer" message on the karaoke machine, which freaks her out. Will's being real sweet in the room. we see Titus and the dock worker, down at the docks. And this is, I guess, well, it's not the first kill, but it's the first kill on the island because he's killed pretty ugly. Titus, has already left, so he kind of hears it, but he doesn't know, and he goes on back. So, Ray tries to call their hotel, but can't get any answer. We get to see the housekeeper killed as well by Hook. There's more kills and more graphic kills in this movie than the first one. So that's an interesting little bit of trivia. There's more kills, and the kills are more graphic in this movie than they were in the first one. Carla and Ty are in the jacuzzi, and Will shows up. We see, and Titus as well, and so that's a really funny scene. Julie then finds that dock worker's body in the closet, causing a big to-do. Mr. Brooks and everybody runs up there, but of course, there's nothing there. She's, of course, now on her "you're crazy again" by everyone around her. People who always know shit's going down are always accused of being crazy in horror movies. If you didn't know that. So, no one believes her. Julia wants to leave, but that's when Mr. Brooks informs them that we're in a lot of trouble. First of all, the ferries are all gone. The ferry's not coming back. There's a big storm on the way. There will not be any coming. There will not be any going. And on top of everything else, the power has went down. So there's no phones. The phones have went down. The power's not down, but the phones have went down. So we see Ray pawning his engagement ring and buying a gun. The next morning, the other three are kind of mad at Julie. You and your crazy paranoia stuff. So, Julie and Carla go to the gym, and Ty and Will are just kind of hanging around. They're going to go look for Titus to get some weed, is what they're going to do. So, am I missing? Oh, there we go. I was like, am I missing something here? All right. It's about this time that we see Titus, and he's in there messing with his weed plants, and he breaks out this big, beautiful bong, and he starts smoking on it, and he's like, his character is so good. I really laugh at him. And then we see a very, very graphic, brutal death scene that I felt for him, He's not funny no more after that hook goes through his hand, nails him to the chair, and then he has those garden shear things, through his chest. So that's pretty wild. So Will and Ty are coming looking for him, and that's when Carla and Julie are in the gym. Julie decides to do the sunbed thing, so it's like a flashback from Final Destination. She's in the tanning bed, and Carla is beating on the punching bags when Carla hears a noise, and she goes into the washroom and finds the maid's body in the industrial dryer. Now, while this is going on, we see someone zip tie, again, like Final Destination. We see someone zip tie the tanning bed closed. Well, not someone. We know it's Hook, right? So that's going down. Carla starts screaming. The guys hear her. They went and found Titus, so they find Titus's body. So they're freaked out. Then they hear, Titus's murder scene. So then they hear the girls scream. They come running for them. And that's when Julie wakes up and realizes she is locked in a full blast tanning bed. So they're all freaked out. Now they all, of course, know that Julie wasn't crazy. Some shit's going down. They just can't figure out who they want to blame for it. So the four of them like go to get the radio, where they find Mr. Brooks, who has also been bashed. We don't get to see his kill, but we get to see what's left of it, and that's pretty rough. You know, he's got a big giant machete through his head and everything. So, like I said, the kills are more graphic in this one than the first one. So they all believe her now, that they know that. She finally just stops. They run to the docks to try to find a boat, but there isn't any, because they've all been cut loose, of course, by our friend, Mr. Hook. And she ends up stopping and just like laying it all out for them. Now, Brandy gets kind of, I keep calling her Brandy. Carla gets kind of mad at her, like, you know, how did you never tell me the whole story, you know? And look at the shit you've got us in. So they remember that Estes, this guy that's like a caretaker, he's on the island. So they go looking for him. And we had seen him in a scene where he looked like he was doing voodoo rituals, Santeria. He's like stolen Julie's toothbrush and Brandy, Carla's hair tie and stuff from the people. So they end up going to his room and finding all of this, finding his voodoo stuff. That's when the power goes out. They do manage to find him back at the hotel. He says that yes, he is into that, but that it was good magic he was doing to protect them. And he also gives them another little secret. And that is, because when the power goes out, you know, he said that it was good magic, but he also tells them that something else was going on, because the capital of Brazil is not Rio de Janeiro. And when they had told him that they had won a trip there by answering this question correctly for a radio show, that's when he knew something was going on. That's when he stole their items to do good magic on them. Because he didn't know what was going on, but he knew something was going on. Because this was obviously a setup. So once they learned that the capital of Rio, which put me at ease too, because I'm like, well, college didn't do me no good then, because I did not know that the capital of Brazil was Rio de Janeiro. So when he did that, I was like, okay, I'm all right. Then I'm all right, because I knew that shit was wrong when she won that damn contest. I'm like, that's not the capital, you know. So they now kind of know this was a setup from the beginning. So Estes agrees to help them find Ben, the killer, because, you know, she tells him, they all tell the story. So Estes agrees to help them find the killer. Ray now shows up at the ferry on the other side in Florida. So he shows up, and he, like, with that gun, he forces the same guy that brought them over, you know, to the Bahamas, to go out in this storm to take him to the island at gunpoint. So they go to a cemetery where Estes tells them the story of Ben, the origin story. So it's in this movie that we get to learn the origin story of Benjamin, the fisherman Hook. So Ben had killed his wife brutally and had left and went to the mainland with his children when they were young. So he had killed his wife and had left with the kids, and that now he was back. This was his island. This is where he was from. And Estes suddenly kind of walks off while the four of them are standing around talking about it. You know, this realization. So Will takes off to go find Estes, while the three of them go back to the hotel to prepare for a siege. So we see Will find Estes, and Estes knocks him out. So now you're kind of like, So is Estes helping Ben? Because I thought he had just was a good guy. But instead, he knocks out Will. We then see Nancy scared as she nearly knocks out Ty when they're looking for a hiding place and they find her. And you kind of forgot about Nancy, so that was a pretty good scare scene. We now see Ray on the boat on the way to the island and him calling for emergency assistance to the Coast Guard for that island. You've got to get people out here. So during that scene, Ty says it has a real cool little monologue where it ends with him saying, and I still haven't seen no motherfucking serial killer with a hook, and he does at that moment because it comes through his face. So he's killed right there in front of all of them. They freak out and take off. They're chased. We have some cool chase scenes, like when Carla falls through that greenhouse roof and stuff like that. So it's a pretty nice little chase scene, reminiscent of Helen's in the first movie. So that works out pretty well. They end up running out of the hotel, and they end up going down to the storm shelter where they find all of the bodies that were missing that Julie had said she had seen, right? More proof, but they didn't really need any proof at this time that Julie was correct, especially after Tyrell was killed in front of them, right? But still, doesn't hurt to prove your point once again. So there's all these bodies, they freak out, and then at the top of the stairs we see Will. And the four of them end up going back to the hotel. They're like, but no hooks in there. No, you'll be all right. So they end up going back to the hotel, and he's hurt, got blood all over him. So Carla and Nancy, they go to get a kit, leaving Will and Julie along in the master dining hall, where things turn ugly, because that is when Julie starts trying to help him with his wound and can't find a wound. And that's when Will tells her that it's not my blood. Now, at that moment, Nancy and Carla, they find the kits, but there's also Estes standing there with this big giant lance, drew him, and he falls directly on top of Nancy. And Carla starts running again, because as she backs up, Hook comes around the corner, takes the lance, and then sticks it right on through Nancy as well. So that was like a Friday the 13th flashback for you. But so we flash back where Will continues his revelations, and that is that he was the DJ that called them that morning. He was the one that faked that contest. He was the one that led this, that he was the DJ, and he takes Julie. Okay. So we end up back at the cemetery with Will and Julie, and that's when he reveals that his name, Will Benson, he tells her, because she is like, who are you and why are you doing this? And he said, please, you can't figure it out. My name is Will Benson, as in Ben's son. And you're like, oh, that was cute. Okay. So Will, this whole time, is actually Benjamin's son. So that was his sister, Susie, that had died in the first movie. And I don't know, has he been helping him the whole time? We can assume. Or maybe he was brought into it later. But in either way, right when he says it, he's like, Ben's son, get it? Hi, Dad. And she turns around and there's Benjamin. So shit really starts going down now. And Ray shows up right as Hook's fisting to kill Julie. Ray shows up. It kind of pauses. And that's when Will and Ray start having this big giant fight. And he does, I think he gets off a shot, which alerts Hook that I'm armed. So he leaves Julie for a second and goes to kill Will after knocking the fuck out of Julie. However, Ray plays it very well to where he tricks Ben into hitting him, but he jumps out of the way and Ben ends up gutting his own son. So, needless to say, that really sent him into the next phase of what the fuck. So, he tricks the situation to make Ben gut Will. Julie then empties the gun into Benjamin. And the next day, we see the helicopter arrive. They find Carla alive still at the hotel. So the three of them are left. And the Coast Guard rescues them. And then we're back to Julie and Ray, obviously engaged now, are at their house. And it's spooky, spooky, creepy, creepy. And Ben. And that was a really cool filmed outro, because you can see Ben under her bed before she notices it. So it's really how close. It's sort of a test of your friends if they haven't seen this movie. A good test of your friends' acumen at watching a movie is to watch them as they're watching that and see if they notice Ben underneath her bed, because she's got a big teddy bear sitting over there. And there's a giant mirror behind the teddy bear in the chair. And it's directly facing the bed. And she's just sitting there calmly looking at the bear and looks and notices Ben underneath her bed, underneath her. But you can notice that before, so you can it's a little test of your friends if they haven't seen this movie. Do they notice it before she does? Because you can see him under her bed before she does. It's a little movie party game you can try. But he, of course, grabs her, she screams, and the movie goes off. Now, my score for this movie is a very nice, healthy 7.5 out of 10. I love this movie. It's very good. I love Jack Black. I love seeing Jeffrey Combs in it. I like the kills. I absolutely love Matthew Settle. I think I went and got a couple more of his movies because I didn't know who he was. He's got a really good movie called Rancid that I loved. But, yeah, he's still around. He's still working. But I love this movie. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Of course, if you notice that I rated it, it's rated lower than the first one. But remember what I told you in that video. There's a lot of other things that go into my 10 out of 10 rating for that movie. And those aren't present in this movie. It's not the classic. It's not the one that started it all. It doesn't have the nostalgia that I have associated with that first movie. So, and besides, 7.5 is a fantastic score. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. And we will be back to talk about the third one in my next video. Love you, miss you, bye. Always remember, never forget, you're a very, very special person. Even if you are not trapped in the Bahamas with a psycho. And a cute, tricky boyfriend who, led you all down the serial killer trail. See you then. Let me know what you think about this movie. What did you think about it compared to the first? Where does it sit in the trilogy for you? And yeah, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.